Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. I have COVID right now, so please be nice to me. My throat's killing me, but I'm trying to push through to record this video because I think it's really important. But I would just really appreciate some love and some nice discourse online for this one. Thank you. So I went into this most recent Zombies map release thinking that Treyarch simply had lost all hope. Like, I had lost faith in Treyarch entirely. Also thinking that Treyarch fundamentally no longer understood what it meant to be a Zombies fan and to enjoy the game, and more specifically, why people like myself had kept playing the game for so many years. Like, I thought that they just didn't get that. And thirdly, I thought that there was never going to be an opportunity or a release or anything that would mean that I would enjoy a Zombies product if it was under the Vanguard umbrella. I thought that Vanguard and Zombies experiences just meant I was going to have a bad time, always. I'm pretty confident that I would put Doranfang and Terra Maledicta at the exact bottom of my tier list if I was to make one. Like, I don't think there's any other Zombies experience that's ever come out that I dislike as much as those two. And so it's a shock to me that Shino Numa is not just the third one on that bottom rung of the tier list. Like, it's not that bad. It's definitely not perfect. There are definitely things that are issues. And in comparison to some of the things that we've had in the past, especially, it's really just not there yet. But it's a significant improvement from Terra Maledicta, it's a significant improvement from Doranfang, and it does give me a teeny tiny smidgen of hope, which is something that I will grasp and cling onto with all my might now that I have some. With this little inkling that maybe if the universe aligns itself correctly, we can get to a couple of really solid maps, probably not in Vanguard, but in the future from Treyarch, then hell yeah, I'm gonna chase that dream as hard as I can. And this actually reminds me of something that some people were saying when I made that video about the Super Easter egg a few months ago, the like controversial sort of video, because they were saying like, well, if you don't like it, like, why are you still here? And I don't think people realize that I'm a fan of Zombies. Like, I have loved this for the past 12, 13 years. And the reason I would ever make a video saying like, this sucks, is because I want it to get better. It's not because I'm trying to like kill Zombies. It's because I'm assessing the fact that Zombies has killed itself, and I'm saying, guys, this is broken and I don't like it. And as a fan, this is not the way forward. Like, I'm trying to share my own opinion about the games and simultaneously to sort of amplify some of your opinions about the game as well, and just to generally to engage with it, even if it sucks, and to acknowledge that, so that when things get good again, I'm still paying attention, and life is good, and we can all enjoy it together, and the fan in me, that has been a fan for so long, can enjoy the game again. And that fan in me enjoyed his couple of playthroughs of Shino Numa. There, I said it. It's not the worst map in the world. And I think we've got to be careful here, because Vanguard is dreadful, and I definitely do not want a single soul to purchase COD Vanguard just to play Shino Numa. But I do think it's the sort of thing that if you already own the game, or if there's a free weekend in like a week's time, 2 weeks time or whatever, it is worth a go just to remind yourself that Treyarch actually haven't entirely lost the plot, which sounds mean, and if there are devs watching this, you might think that I'm just being kind of rude for no reason here, but Doranfang and Terra Maledicta completely made me feel like the devs had lost all sense of what was good about Zombies, because at every turn in those maps, you are confronted with things that go fundamentally against the entire ethos of what was fun in the past. So I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or rude when I say that. I'm simply stating the fact that I really dislike those experiences, and I think they're really poorly designed and executed. But Shino Numa isn't. And there's something to be said for the fact that it's round-based versus the old system of gameplay, whatever you would call that. And I think that that is a massive contributor to it. But it's also evident in, for example, the Easter egg design. The Terra Maledicta Easter egg is so embarrassing. It just is. And for the record here, I'm abstracting this particular part of the conversation from, well, of course it's sort of like a smaller Easter egg or whatever. It's been developed on a newer engine and they've got a small team and blah, blah, blah. I'm abstracting from that right now because at the end of the day, these are being marketed as Zombies maps. So I'm evaluating them as Zombies maps. It's an embarrassing Easter egg. The Shi No Numa Easter egg is pretty damn good. It's clearly suffering from budget and time constraints that Cold War didn't experience in the same way. Obviously, that game had its share of challenges. They made it during COVID, like all those things. But this is a different flavor of restrained. But the egg itself is very Cold War, but also does a few things that it almost feels like we wouldn't have had in Cold War that are a little bit more tricky potentially, but that's a really good thing. For example, there's a step in this Easter egg where you have to use the Wunderwaffe to zap these blue glowing zombies around an obelisk and charge it up. And it's not the most straightforward thing to do in the world. Like, you could fail that pretty easily. In fact, myself, Noah, and Chop were coordinating at a decently high round, maybe 25-30 or so. We were coordinating to try and do it round after round after round, and we kept failing because you really have to do it right. And that is a good thing. I want to fail Easter egg steps. I want to not be skillful enough. Like, that is absolutely a plus. And that didn't really even happen that much during Cold War. Like, in Cold War, it's always pretty straightforward what you're doing, I would argue. There are maybe places here or there where that's not the case and it is sort of more of a challenge or it's more likely to be something that you could fail. Like, especially, for example, the Outbreak Easter egg when you're in the silo. Like, it does get hairy there, and that's a good thing. But the fact that we get it middle of the Easter egg in Shi No Numa is just a really, really good sign. Also, there's a cipher step, and it's a cipher step that is actually really easy. Like, it's not a Dead of the Night, align the lights kind of step, nor is it, Infinite Warfare Zombies do the twisty wall thing step, nor is it a World War II Zombies figure out the statues thing, which I very vaguely remember right now. Can't even remember if that was a logic puzzle or not, but I think it was. It's not a puzzle of that description, which I would love to come back at some point, by the way, Treyarch, but it does require you to critically think for like the first time in this game. I don't think there's been another point in Vanguard Zombies where I've got to an Easter egg step and gone, how do I solve this? Like, that's just not really been a feeling that I have had in months. And it's also implemented really well because it doesn't require you to do loads of homework going into the map or the egg in order to complete it. It's something that you can brute force after getting only 2 symbols really easily as well if you want. So you've kind of got options for how you choose to solve the puzzle. And doing the actual translation in order to solve it is very straightforward after you've done it the first time, but the first time takes a little bit of brain power. That is the perfect Easter egg step. When you've got something that the first time round is a really tricky kind of mind bender, and then you figure it out, and once you know how the magician does his trick, you can kind of work backwards almost to just solve it every time without having to consult like an entire database of different bits and pieces here and there and do a load of stuff outside the game in order to figure things out in the game every time you want to replay a map. So Treyarch, again, thumbs up. The general kind of gameplay loop in The general kind of gameplay loop in Shi No Numa is also significantly improved compared to Doranfang and Terra. And I've seen multiple people that I follow, just like friends of mine on Twitter or whatever, or people in my stream chats, YouTube comments, stuff like that, saying the craziest thing is happening to them because they're jumping into Shi No Numa and they don't feel like they only want to just do the Easter egg and then get off. Like, there are people out there that are jumping into the map and just shooting zombies because shooting zombies is fun. And shooting zombies being fun is the origin of the mode. That's exactly why we started playing it in the first place. And the fact that that is happening in Vanguard is mind-blowing to me, but again, is an incredibly positive sign. However, there is still loads of stuff that sort of sucks. And I think actually, one of the biggest issues with this entire game is the way it's been marketed. And I think I'm probably going to do a separate video about this at some point because I just need to like let off steam, to be honest, about this topic. But the marketing for Vanguard Zombies has hurt it in the same way that the marketing for Halo 5 hurt that game. I love Halo 5. The vast majority of Earth's population would argue with me that actually it's just objectively a bad game and that there isn't stuff to love in there. But my view on it is that having gone in without seeing any of the marketing, it's a pretty good product. It's just that you need to evaluate it based on what that product is instead of based on what you were told it is and then matching that expectation to reality. With Vanguard Zombies, we went in thinking that it was going to be a sequel to Cold War. We had the Covenant system and all this stuff described to us in such a way that made it sound like they'd taken the Zombies experience and gone, all right, let's make an equivalent thing. It's not the same, but let's make an equivalent one that will, for lack of a better term here, hold people's interest just as well as any other Zombies mode would do. I think it was obvious, though, once we played Vanguard Zombies, that that's not what we were getting. We were getting a much smaller team's efforts, first of all. And again, from the fan perspective, there is no reason why that shouldn't still mean we get complete, perfect, AAA polished Zombies experience that we might be used to. Because all of the marketing, like, especially like that intro cutscene trailer thing with the court effects and just the initial reveal of him with art and everything, set everyone up in such a way that we really thought Vanguard Zombies was going to be 5 times bigger than it actually is. And I'm not saying that in terms of space, I'm saying that in terms of developer time investment. I'm saying that in terms of fan service. I'm saying that in terms of things that we as a community, in our own ways of playing the game, because all of us play the game differently, but as a community, we'd be able to tap into as the sandbox of the experience, the sandbox of the mode. But it just wasn't there. And then Terra Maledicta came out, and basically the same was true. And then that Super Easter egg came out, and again, it's like, Jesus Christ, you are so unbelievably bad at marketing this product because you're constantly telling us that it's gonna be something so much bigger than it actually is. Can you imagine how different things would have been on launch for Vanguard Zombies if we'd gone into it with Treyarch having initially said, or sorry, let me be clear, I think this is Activision's problem. If Activision had allowed Treyarch to say, or had themselves said, this is a scaled down Zombies experience that is intended to give you a flavor of some of the things that Treyarch are working on at greater scale for future Call of Duty releases, but this is just a starter to your later main course. If they had said this is incomparable to any other Zombies experiences because this is intended to be an experience that you play once or twice and then you don't necessarily come back to in the same way that you would with other modes. If they had basically set expectations where they should have been from the very beginning, saying, yes, we've got these new Dark Ether gods in it, and yes, Court Effects looks really cool, and yes, here's a cinematic trailer and stuff, but this has also been in development for a much shorter amount of time with a much smaller team, and it's a team supporting someone else's engine. If they'd said all of that from the beginning, before the game had come out, I reckon our day one experience would have been significantly different. The game would have been the same, it still would have sucked, but I would have been able to look at that and go, okay, I see that this is just the beginning of something. This isn't something that I'm going into having thought, oh, well, it's being marketed as a full Zombies experience, so I'm going to enjoy it as such, right? And I think all of us would have been able to basically say, all right, well, we don't feel like we were missold on this, so I don't detest it nearly as much. Like, it's that dissonance that I think was honestly the straw that broke the camel's back for Doranfang and for Vanguard Zombies in general. And weirdly, Shino Numa doesn't do much better in the marketing department. I think they've actually marketed it terribly, but there are 1 or 2 things that are improvements, which are good things. For example, the fact that I went into this thinking that the Easter egg was going to be a Terra Maledicta level quest, and actually it was significantly better. It was actually fun. It's got some challenge to it. It has some requirement for attention and intelligence and logic, and it then gives you some reasonable rewards at the end. Like, those are all pluses, but still, overall, marketing is being done so badly by Activision at this point for Zombies, and I think that it really weighs things down a lot. A big problem with Shino Numa actually is that people just didn't know it was even coming out. Like, obviously, all of the really tuned in folks in the Zombies community, like the folks that if I upload a video, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna watch it. And you're also gonna watch all the videos from Pizza and from Noah and from Lex, and like, you watch everything, right? You guys obviously knew that Shi No Numa was on the way, but there's a huge number of casual fans who still tune into the content when there's like big stuff going on, who didn't even know this map was on the way. Like, I saw people asking where the trailer was for Shi No Numa, and I had to point them towards this 22-second video that Call of Duty uploaded, of which about half is just like title cards. It's not even gameplay. And after 24 hours, it had what, like 50k views or something? It got no views, that video. It's probably on more now, but it's still tiny because they just didn't push it out. Like, people were not really amped up for this at all. And part of that's fair enough because they were just sort of burned from Terra Maledicta and from Doranfang, and so why market something from Activision's point of view that you know people are going to dislike? But when you've got something good, you should be marketing that, and Shi No Numa is good. Also, I'll talk about this in more depth in another video, but for now, I think that the decision to involve the Chaos story here is really interesting. It kind of flies in the face of what they've said in the past. But it's like night and day how you involve content like that, and instantly you see people in comment sections and in stream chats, etc., social media, wherever, saying, you know what, I'm kind of interested in how this is going to go. Like, I'm really curious about why this is here. I might have an idea of what's happening. Let me just like type out a quick little theory in this stream chat or something. Let's see what the streamer thinks of it. And those are things which, through Cold War, there was almost no incentive to do. Like, the Cold War story is so painfully telegraphed and just generally executed, I think, in a really bad way, which is unfortunate because I think that certain things in the Cold War story are great. And I think that there is room to really enjoy that story. I just think that the method of delivery is so poor in so many cases and so subpar compared to some of the stuff that we've had in the past. And again, Shi No Numa suffers from that. Like, some of the voice acting in this map is like some of the worst I've potentially ever heard in COD. It's embarrassingly bad. And again, you got the flip side caveats to everything here. They recorded a bunch of this, I'm sure, with pandemic issues going on around the world. They probably weren't able to get in the same studio together. They were probably having voice actors recording stuff at home in their cupboards. Like, that is the thing that the video game industry is dealing with. And I appreciate that. And I understand that. But when you're marketing something as the same as everything else that's not been under those constraints, and when you show no kind of like self-awareness about the situation, and you're just like, well, I'm Call of Duty and I'm great, right? But then you've got voice acting that is that poor. It's like, is this like a parody at this point? It's just not good. And again, I'm sorry to the voice actors involved on those. I don't know if it's that the direction is just not in the right place. I don't know if it's the writing that you're being given, the stuff that you actually have to read out loud is just not very good. Like, I don't know exactly where in the cooking of the pie it's going wrong, but it's really going wrong right now, and I'd love to see that improved in future Zombies maps from Treyarch, because some of the older Treyarch voice acting and radios and announcers and character quotes and stuff, some of the older stuff, some of my favorite voice acting in video games ever. And so to go from that to this is why I'm like, oh man, this is weak, but it could improve. We'll see. I also think the whole appealing to casuals only isn't helping. Also, I talked about this on stream with Noah and with Chop and with a couple of other folks as well in my stream chat. We were chatting about it. I think that in general, the core sort of 30-second gameplay loop of Vanguard Zombies just isn't fun. And a lot of that is just to do with the engine and the way that they've written it all out in the scripting and stuff like that right now, the AI, the way it works, etc. But like, there are things in there that, in my opinion, could quite easily be tweaked and that I do think would significantly improve the experience. So for example, when you get hit, if you get hit a single time by a zombie, which happens far more often than I think it should. Like, Chop said this really well. There's far too much unearned damage in Vanguard Zombies. And that's not just the guys that shoot you, that's entirely unearned in my view. And I've said this since Exo Zombies, being shot in zombies instantly makes me detest the experience. I don't mind if it's a parasite, shooting a little buggy ball at me or something like that. I don't mind if it's a spider. If it's a man with a gun, get it out of the game. Misunderstanding of what fun is or isn't in zombies. Misunderstanding. But it's not even that's the issue, really. It's the fact that you could be running directly past a zombie, not even that close to it, and just be hit. And you're just like, oh, I'm weak now. That's really annoying. But specifically, when that happens, the sheer volume of jelly on your screen is insane. The game is already grayish red. It's a disgusting color palette. Like, I absolutely detest the way the game looks, personally. And so when you take gray red, this sort of brown that isn't even committed enough to be brown, it's just like a red gray, I can describe it no other way. And then you layer on top of that some jelly. Ugh. It's just awful. It just looks so bad. And it's a dark map anyway, which I'm not a huge fan of. I don't really like dark maps in general. I prefer when they're pretty well lit, but that's just a stylistic choice. The crap on the screen when I get hit is a stylistic choice that is just bad. So that makes the 30-second loop annoying. Then you're constantly getting hit in unearned ways, so your armor is constantly depleting, and that's annoying. You also earn salvage really slowly. So the salvage kind of power curve that we had in Cold War, that I think Kevin Drew was the sort of mastermind behind, that he worked really hard on, is now pretty much dysfunctional. Like, it just feels unfun. You're constantly needing to buy armor, which means you pretty much never get to tier 3 armor, or certainly not easily. You never feel powerful. You always feel like this frail, weak, dirty, kind of like smudged up player who can't really do that great damage to the zombies around them unless they're using the same old shotgun that everyone else is using. And even then, it's just like, it's not satisfying to me in the ways that previous Zombies experiences have been. Cold War was one of the most fun Zombies experiences to just shoot heads in to date, and that's entirely lost in this mode, in my opinion. But I want to be clear here and remind you of what I said a second ago. Some folks are really enjoying that 30-second loop. Some folks are finding that they are potentially interested in going for a high round here, or just sort of playing for fun. Like, my personal opinion of this is not the be-all end-all. There are other viewpoints here. I just think that the 30-second kind of core gameplay loop is ass, and doesn't make me want to return to the game at all. That's not Shino Numa's fault, though. That's just Vanguard Zombies being Vanguard Zombies. Now, one thing I've seen a lot of complaints about, a lot of people saying, Treyarch, what were you thinking? This is awful, but that I actually don't mind at all, weirdly, is the end cutscene. The end cutscene is, I think, 6, maybe 7, 6 images that they play for you in 2 separate chunks as a slideshow. It's literally a PowerPoint presentation. And I'm not talking like Alpha Omega end cutscene kind of level of sort of flowing animation-y thing. No, it's literal still images. And there's only 5 or 6 frames of them. And I've seen people in comments saying, this is proof that Treyarch have lost the plot. This is proof that they don't care, things like that. And I think that it's important to say, number one, Treyarch do care. Like, the devs that are there, they care about the work that they're doing. That goes for any studio. And I don't think it's a lack of care that is what you're trying to sort of nail down in your comment there. What you're trying to nail down is your feeling, I think, that they've misdirected their efforts and their energy, and they've given you something that they think is sufficient to quench your thirst for content, whereas actually it's not even close, and so you're like, it's not even close. They must not care. They must not be trying. Do you know what I mean? I went into Shino Numa thinking we weren't going to get an end cutscene. I thought that it was just going to end, and that was going to be that. And I also thought that the egg was going to be significantly worse than it was. And the fact that there's as much audio as there is, and there's little kind of quick-timey moments almost where you've got the ball floating around, for instance. You've got that nice little scene with that floating around. You've got other bits where stuff's sort of talking to you as you do things. You've got a reasonable boss fight. Like, it's totally reasonable. All those things are surprises to me beyond my baseline level of I thought it was going to be utter trash. And so they're a thumbs up. And then you get an end cutscene that is 5 sort of slides. And again, it's like, I look at it and I compare it to anything else we've had in the past. Compare it, for example, to the Outbreak Easter egg. In the Outbreak Easter egg, there's like 2 or 3 separate little mini cutscenes that are in there that are all in-engine, and they're great, and it's awesome. Like, Ravenov literally beats people up. It's so cool. And in this, we got a slideshow. But I don't care. Because in this instance, the end cutscene is the least of my worries. It is the least of my worries. Everything else is the most of my worries. And if we don't have end cutscenes for the next zombies map as well, like if there's literally nothing and the game just ends, I'm not going to sit here and be like, that's ridiculous. It's when the other parts of the experience are not absolutely awful that I think it's valid to then be like, okay, this purely sort of cosmetic extra thing that they may have had time to develop or may not have done in this case, that's something that is worth kind of like spending energy on critically assessing. Like, I don't think a bad end cutscene is a reason not to play Shi No Numa, because what Shi No Numa does right is not its end cutscene. It's the fact that it subverts your expectations of it being totally bad, just flat out bad, and ends up being perfectly playable. I also have to give him props for, like, that rampage inducer little Easter egg thing in the spawn. That's good. That is good. More of that, please. And props, I think, are also due for things like this poster on the wall. More of that, please. And maybe some of it that's a little bit less obvious. That would be really appreciated. But again, I get that they're trying to make the experience pretty kind of easy to read for a newer player, etc. So, like, those sorts of things being, like, right in your face is whatever. Fair enough. Fine. With all of this said, I think the question that most of us have come to at some point in the last 24, 48 hours, and that I keep coming back to, is why on earth didn't they just start Vanguard Zombies with something like this? I mean, it was in the game at launch. Like, they literally had that hut in the game in Duranfang, because you teleport to it. So it's there, and it just would have made so much more sense to me if that is what they used as the sort of central focal point of the experience, and all the other teleporty weird stuff could have been experiments later down the line. Like, start with something a bit safer, surely, in a year where you're completely time crunched, and you're gonna struggle to develop on the engine anyway, no? Maybe it was just a time thing. Maybe they couldn't build out the systems they needed for round-based, they physically couldn't do it, but they could build out the sort of round-based thing that they'd never made before that would surely have required completely proprietary new code as opposed to being able to reuse absolutely anything from the past, or at least understanding and knowledge of the design decisions in the past that worked, like not talking about implementation, just talking about the ideas themselves that were good ideas and those that weren't. Like, you had a playbook to go by, but you went with this weird thing that is just bad. I don't get it. I don't get what Treyarch were thinking, to be honest. Because I'm convinced the devs know Duranfang isn't good. I'm convinced of it. Because no single game designer on the planet can honestly play through the last 10 years of Zombies, right? Can have that kind of cultural understanding, and then can jump into Anfang and go, oh yeah, this is better, or oh yeah, this is fun, or oh yeah, I want to play this over and over again. No game designer is going to do that. So they get it. They just went in this weird direction for, I just don't understand it, man. And then they marketed it as if it was going to be the Sardines Whiskers. And all of us were like, ugh. Shino Numa flies in the face of that. It's worth trying if you have Vanguard already. I would highly recommend you do not buy the game to play Shino Numa. The only recommendation I'm ever going to make for you to purchase COD Vanguard is if the next map that comes along after Shino Numa is a top 10 map of all time, which is not going to happen. My view, I think, is that Vanguard as a game is cursed, and it's only worth buying if you're going to spend 10, 15 bucks on it tops, because you're then going to get 2 zombies maps, 2 round-based maps, Shino Numa and Egypt, and those will be passable, and spending 15 bucks on those 2 passable maps is valid. That's fair enough in my view. Any more money than that, I think you're getting bumped. Like, it's a rip-off. Buy the game maybe second-hand from a physical reseller. Like, that might be quite a good way to get access to it for really cheap. But for the love of God, like, don't pay 50 bucks for this game just to play Shino Numa. Wrong move. Next year, we're also getting, like, some kind of free-to-play zombies thing. So you'll be able to check that out for free too, which is quite exciting. I'll have more content on that coming as we hear more about it. But for now, if you do own Vanguard, yes, it's worth re-downloading and jumping into Shino Numa just to give it a try once or twice, get that Easter egg done, build the Wunderwaffe, go for round 30. Just go for round 30 one single time, and then feel free to uninstall the game and wait for my coverage of the next map to come out when that map comes out in, let's say, 3 months' time from now. Like, that's totally valid. I just want people to give this particular map a chance. And if it's not for you, by the way, valid as well. Because it's Vanguard, I get it. I just want people like yourself to have the same experience that I did jumping into this map and going, oh, not all hope is lost. It's only most hope, but it's not all of it. That is a step that I think we need to welcome, and we need to not just sort of blindly be like, well, I hate Vanguard in all its entirety and da-da-da, so I'm not going to go anywhere near it. I totally understand Lex's point of view where he was saying we should just boycott it. I totally get that, and there is a totally valid argument there, 100%. But in this instance, I think that Shi No Numa deserves to at least be looked at. It deserves to be considered. So jump in, let me know what you think. Let me know if you're just as mystified as I am as to what Treyarch were thinking when they released Duranfang. Because also, actually, if you think about it, the survive objective and all that stuff is literally in Duranfang anyway. So it's not that they didn't have the systems built, because they're there. I don't know. I'll be chatting more about some specific, more niche topics in the next couple of days, but I just wanted to get this kind of like Shi No Numa evaluation video out because I want people to give it a look. And the Call of Duty marketing is certainly not pushing anyone towards giving it a look. It's doing such a bad job. So I figured I would just sort of like raise my hand and be like, hey guys, it's worth checking this out. So that's what I'm doing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.